Can you effect change in your life? How do you learn life's lessons?
Major one, Luke, the most important of all, patience. Now, hard to believe, but patience. Because as long as you live, you can affect change. We've talked about this a lot. You know that as long as you're here, you can do something. So, and you learn that no matter how upsetting it is, when I was quite young, look, when I was 25, 26, I played the stock market, and it was very exciting. And I unfortunately overplayed the market, and it had terrible, terrible, terrible financial consequences over a period of 3 or 4 days. It was just like magically fast, if you can put it that crudely. And I was shocked and stunned, and a friend of mine lost even more, and what have you. But I recovered my money. Took a period of time, but what seemed like the end of my life, in a bizarre sort of way, was the beginning of life, because you put money in context, many things, So I think that's, as long as you're there to play the game, you can have a point, right?
How do you get through a crisis?
Yeah. Well, some things are tragic. There's been, as you age, you experience things like death, that are very, very stunning. And how do you deal with this? I think a big part of it is you've got to learn to breathe. So the body, I believe the body is a lot like a machine in a way, right? So you've got to learn to breathe to calm your heart rate. Because if your heart rate is out of control, you can't, at least in my case, I can't think. So the first thing I do is I try to calm myself down through breathing, just. And there's an exercise, I believe it's called the 4x4. So if you do it, if you breathe in and out 4 times, make it a square, you actually calm your heart rate. It's used by theater people, I believe, and what have you, before they go on stage. And then, after that, I always go, and people disagree with me, but I always go to the worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that will happen here? And then upon knowing the worst case scenario, in a bizarre sort of way, I feel better. Because in my life, I don't think I've ever experienced the worst case scenario, ever. Oh, maybe once, but that passed as well, right? But it never happens, the worst case scenario. So, and as long as you're alive, as long as you're conscious, you can affect change once again. So that's what I do, look, in myself. Not easy, you'd be naive to say that when bad things happen, it's okay. It's not okay, period. It's really, 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 really bad. But, curiously, this too shall pass.
What is the worst case scenario?
Well, from what I've read and what I've seen, I think, unfortunately, sometimes people experience the worst thing they can imagine, right? And they stop. That's where they stay. And they use stimulants, or drugs, alcohol, runaway lifestyle, and they'd never grow after this point. So if you take time, and I've done it, Luke, you've probably done it too, you go speak to a clochard in Paris, in the metro. He's sleeping beside his own vomit, basically, and you ask him, like, why are you doing this? There's a reason, there's an excuse. Unfortunately, there is no excuse for life. So that's why I think I always caution that the bad things happen to everyone, Luke. We lose our loved ones, we lose all our money, we don't get that position, we fail to get into a good school, we don't marry the girl or boy perhaps that we thought we wanted to, they marry someone else. All of these things is a normal human experience, but will it break me is the question. That man committed suicide very recently, Baudouin, I think his name is Baudouin, he's famous chef. And I think basically, I don't think he was depressed or mad. I think it was just, that was a day that it was good enough. He wasn't going on. He was at the top of his game. He was extremely famous. He was probably rich. He had that beautiful girlfriend. And it was the day that the mind said, yeah, it's not going to get any better. So for whatever reason, that was his depression, if you can put it that day. I don't think it was mad. It was just that he didn't believe that he would ever achieve anything more, I think, and he's wrong, of course. He's totally wrong, but that was his decision that day. Fickle decision, perhaps, but, yeah, look, gosh, you better get on to this great question. If you read anything, let's take some of the great books. King Solomon's Mines, I always found that a fascinating book, because they're going to struggle to get to King Solomon's Mines, and in the end, what they achieve is not what they thought they would achieve, but they have the adventure which uncovers who they are. That's life, right? Treasure Island, you don't get the treasure and then you do, but the treasure is of a different making, right? It's not in the arrival, it's in the journey. That's why it kind of shifted there, Get on with your journey, man.
What could break me? How is it possible?
This is the age-old question. God, the cosmos, whomever, gives us life. And he gives us a unique life. And we realize that when we're about 20. So is there a purpose to life? I would say no, personally. There's no purpose to life, right? No, there's no purpose to life. But if I'm willing to spend the time uncovering the beautiful me, there's a lot of purpose to life, right? Because is there an intrinsic purpose to life separate from me? I'm just one of 7.8 billion beings now, right? In my uniqueness, and we're all the same. But I think there is a purpose to life in the sense that I have to uncover it, right? I do. So it's kind of a bizarre dichotomy, isn't it? There is no purpose to life, but there is. But there is no purpose to life if I say there's no purpose. But there is a purpose if I say there is, and I uncover it. So, yeah.
How do you get on with the journey?
Well, what's the old story? It's the little engine that could. And you're at the mountain, and the little engine is going to pull the train, and the little engine is not quite strong enough to really pull the train, but the little engine tells itself, I'm going to pull this train load of cars or what have you up the mountain, and eventually the engine does. And I think that's what happens, the people that we see that are successful. I've read a lot about people that are successful. 99% of their lives they've been unsuccessful, right? The guy I really enjoy is Colonel Saunders. He's about my age when he discovered this special recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think it was 62 or 63. And all his life he'd been trying to find the special recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And gosh, 62 to discover it, okay. And they make him the colonel, and he's famous, and et cetera, et cetera. But the best part of his life, he was a failure to himself, right? So we see him as successful, but it's the mission, Luke, eh? That's the purpose of it all. It's the mission, because we don't know ultimately where we are going to arrive. Things happen, right? In Canada, I was reading in the newspaper, whether it's true or not, that there's a very, very impoverished Afghani immigrant. He's come to Canada, and what's that? That's the lottery. Buys a ticket, he wins $2.8 million, like real money, right? Canadian dollars, almost American dollars, not quite, but still, it's about 2.5 million US dollars. And then the next week, walks down the street, there's a $20 million scratch and win. He scratches it, wins $2 million. So in 2 weeks, he's won over $4 million US. It's a fortune, right? There he is. He's gone from totally impoverished to, but if he hadn't have bought the ticket, if he hadn't have gone to Canada, you know how it goes, right? No action, he'd still be in some godforsaken village in nowhere, Afghanistan, right? There we are. So now whether the story unfortunately is true is the other. We never know if the government is not planting these stories to encourage immigrants to. You don't. Have to be a bit of a cynic, in a way. But I think there's probably some truth to the story.
What is the role of meditation in a person's life?
Well, I think what is meditation, first of all? Meditation is a place that your mind is at peace to be able to think. I mean, basically, it's like sleep in a certain sense, I believe, and I'm not a professional meditator at all. But in my humble experience, if you put yourself at a state of peace, it's just like having a good rest. You have tremendous energy to be thoughtful. So that's what meditation is, I think. It gives you a rest, and then you can think things through. Because, look, the great difficulty with the mind is that the mind has to be trained to think. It doesn't think naturally. It responds instinctively. There's food, I want food. There's sex, I want sex. There's pleasure, I want pleasure. But thoughtfully, it doesn't do this. So it has to be trained. You know yourself, you're an educated man. It takes time to think things thoughtfully through. And that's, to be honest, that's why I enjoy meditation. Because sometimes I don't meditate, to be fair. I'm in a meditative state, but my mind is suddenly open to, let's say, a problem I haven't analyzed properly, and there's the solution. And I just think, wow, gosh, if I wasn't here doing my meditation, I would never have come to that point. So I find it a very attractive time, to be honest. It's my own space. And I try to do it without any noise, but of course we live in a very noisy world, as such. So meditating in Poland was very interesting, because on my friend's estate, there's absolutely no noise. Terrifying, in a way. No noise. Not even, sometimes the birds even leave. And there you are for 20 minutes or an hour with absolutely nothing but you, right? Mindfulness, as they say. Right? Spectacular, really spectacular. So that's why.